I found out my husband was living a double life because of a number on a screen. 165 beats per minute. I was lying in bed at 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, mindlessly scrolling through our shared fitness app, the one Daniel had insisted we download 6 months ago so we could motivate each other. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just looking, watching the rhythm of his sleep cycles, the steps he'd taken that day, the calories burned. And then I saw it. A heart rate spike that looked like a mountain peak on the graph. Tuesday night.
2:14 a.m.
His heart had jumped from a resting 62 BPM to 165 in seconds. The kind of spike you get from sprinting, or terror, or the adrenaline rush of almost being caught. I remembered that night. I texted him at 2:13 a.m. asking if he wanted tea. He'd been downstairs, said he couldn't sleep, was working. And his response had come 2 full minutes later with those 3 dots appearing and disappearing over and over. My hands started shaking as I opened our shared iCloud account, the one we'd set up years ago when we were young and trusted each other with everything. The one Daniel had clearly forgotten about. His messages loaded.
Hundreds of them.
All to a contact saved as Travis Gym Buddy. The most recent was timestamped 2:14 a.m. last Tuesday. I can't keep doing this. My wife almost caught us last week. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. What had I almost caught? And what did us mean? I scrolled up, my heart now racing to match Daniel's 165 BPM, and started reading. And with every message, I peeled back another layer of the man I thought I'd married. The first layer seemed simple. Money. Messages about transfers, amounts, accounts I'd never heard of. Venmo payments I'd noticed, but accepted his explanation for. Gym bets, he'd said. Travis was kicking his ass, so he kept losing money. Except these weren't small betting amounts. 3 months of messages revealed he'd been pulling money from our savings. Our joint account that we'd built together over 7 years of marriage. The account where we'd been saving $47,000 for IVF treatments because we'd been trying to have a baby for 2 years with no success. Travis, 2 months ago, you need to transfer more if you want to see real returns. This is how wealth is built. Daniel, I can't. She checks the account. She'll notice. Travis, then open a separate one. You're thinking too small. By the time she figures it out, you'll have tripled it. Financial infidelity. That was layer 1. My husband had been secretly draining our savings for some kind of investment scheme with a man I'd never met. I felt sick, but I kept reading. Because something told me this was just the beginning. The second layer was geography. I cross-referenced the messages with our credit card statements, another thing synced to that old shared account Daniel had forgotten about. The work trips he'd taken. The late dinners with clients. The overnight conference in Chicago. All lies. Charges at hotels in downtown Minneapolis, 20 minutes from our house. Restaurants I'd never been to. Bars that didn't open until 10 p.m. All on nights when Daniel had texted me that he was stuck in meetings or traffic was terrible, or just going to crash at a hotel near the office rather than drive home late. One message from Travis, 6 weeks ago. Same place as last time? The suite with the skyline view. Daniel. Perfect. Tell them we'll be there by 9. That night, Daniel had told me he was driving to Rochester for a client presentation and wouldn't be home until the next afternoon. I'd kissed him goodbye, told him to drive safe, gone to bed alone in our house, while he was at a hotel suite 20 minutes away with Travis. My husband wasn't just stealing our money.
He was stealing time. Nights.
Moments that belonged to us, to our marriage, and spending them somewhere else. With someone else. But it still wasn't adding up to an affair. The messages were too focused on business, on money, on opportunities, and investments. So, what were they really doing in those hotel rooms? I kept scrolling, my stomach turning with each new revelation. The third layer shattered me. Photos. Dozens of them, stored in a hidden iCloud album Daniel thought was private. My husband, my steady, predictable, khaki-wearing husband who worked in medical device sales, looked like a different person. Designer suits I'd never seen. Expensive watches I didn't recognize. standing in hotel rooms and restaurants that screamed wealth and power. And Travis beside him in every photo. Not a gym buddy. A polished, confident man in his late 30s with perfect hair and a smile that looked like it had been professionally practiced. In one photo, they were in what looked like a private dining room, surrounded by other men in suits, everyone holding cocktails. Daniel's face was flushed with excitement, animated in a way I rarely saw at home. Another photo, the two of them in a hotel room, laptop open, screens showing cryptocurrency charts and graphs. Travis's hand on Daniel's shoulder, both of them grinning. Another. Daniel wearing a watch I'd never seen. A luxury chronograph with a blue face that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage.
I zoomed in on that watch.
Then I checked our credit card history. $3,200. Charged to a jewelry store 3 weeks ago. The same week Daniel had told me we needed to tighten our budget because his commission had been lower that month. He'd bought himself a $3,200 watch while telling me we couldn't afford to go out to dinner.
No, wait.
I zoomed in on another photo. Travis was wearing the same watch. Daniel had bought Travis a $3,200 watch with our IVF money. But it was more than the watch. It was the entire transformation I was witnessing through these photos. This wasn't my husband. This was someone pretending to be wealthy, successful, important. Someone who wanted desperately to be part of a world that didn't include me. The messages confirmed it. Daniel, for months ago, Charlotte asked about the Venmo transfers again. I'm running out of excuses. Travis, you need to decide what's more important. Playing house with your nurse wife or actually becoming someone? Daniel, it's not that simple. Travis, it is. You're either in or you're out. But you can't keep one foot in her boring suburban life and expect to build real wealth with me. I read that message 10 times. Her boring suburban life. That's how my husband had described our marriage to this man.
Boring.
Something to escape from. But I still didn't understand what they were actually doing. What was worth $47,000 of our money? What required hotel rooms and secret meetings and a complete second identity? What was layer 4? The fourth layer was where everything crystallized into something darker. I found a document in Daniel's cloud storage, a pitch deck. Professional, slick, full of charts and projections. The title, Crypto Elite Investment Partnership, Exclusive Opportunity. Daniel and Travis weren't just investing in cryptocurrency. They were recruiting other investors. Running a scheme that promised 30 to 40% monthly returns through proprietary algorithmic trading strategies. It was a pyramid. One of those multi-level cryptocurrency scams where the only people making money are the ones at the top, constantly recruiting new victims to fund the returns promised to earlier investors. The messages told the story of how Daniel had gotten pulled in. 7 months ago, Travis had approached Daniel at a cryptocurrency conference, not a gym. Travis had seemed successful, connected, wealthy. He'd pitched Daniel on an opportunity with guaranteed returns. Just put in a little money to start. See how it works. Daniel, drowning in the failure of our IVF attempts, feeling like he was failing me, had seen it as salvation. A way to be the hero. To surprise me with enough money to change our lives. He'd started with $1,000. Travis had returned $2,100 2 weeks later. So Daniel put in more, and more, and more. But here's the thing about pyramid schemes. Those early returns aren't real profits. They're just bait, paid out from new investor money to create the illusion of success. Daniel never made any real money. The $47,000 he'd pulled from our savings was gone, spent maintaining the fantasy. The hotel rooms where they'd meet investors. The expensive meals where they'd pitch the opportunity. The designer clothes and watches to look successful enough to convince others to hand over their money. Travis was the recruiter. Daniel was the mark who'd become a recruiter himself, too deep in to admit he'd been scammed. The messages from the last month were desperate. Daniel, I need to pull out. We've lost everything. Charlotte is going to find out. Travis, you pull out now, you lose it all. One more recruit. One more big investor, and we're back on track. Daniel, I can't do this anymore. I'm lying to my wife every single day. Travis. Then tell her. Tell her you tried to make her dreams come true. Tell her you were trying to give her the life she deserves. She'll understand. Except he never told me. He just kept lying, kept transferring money, kept meeting Travis at hotels and restaurants, playing dress up in his expensive clothes, pretending to be someone he wasn't. All while I was home, working extra shifts at the hospital, skipping vacations, saving every penny for the family we were trying to build. But there was still one more layer. One more truth I hadn't uncovered yet. The fifth and final layer destroyed me completely. I found it in a voice memo saved to Daniel's cloud storage from 3 weeks ago. He'd been practicing what to say to me, rehearsing his confession. I almost didn't listen to it. Almost closed my laptop and confronted him with what I already knew. But something made me press play. Daniel's voice, shaking, on the edge of tears. Charlotte, I need to tell you something. I've been lying to you for months, and I can't live with it anymore. The money is gone. All of it. I invested it with someone I thought I could trust, and it's gone. But that's not the worst part. A long pause. The sound of him crying. The worst part is that I knew it was a scam. Not at first, but 3 months ago, I figured it out. I knew Travis was running a pyramid scheme. I knew our money was gone. And I kept doing it anyway because I couldn't face you. Couldn't face what I'd done. So I kept recruiting people. Kept convincing other couples to invest their savings. Kept taking their money knowing it would disappear just like ours did. Another pause. His voice barely a whisper. I've destroyed 12 families, Charlotte. 12 couples who trusted me because I seemed successful and happy and secure. I took their IVF money, their kids' college funds, their retirement savings. And I watched Travis spend it on hotels and meals and gifts while I told these people their returns were coming. While I looked them in the eyes and lied. The sound of him sobbing. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that I'm not even sorry about the money anymore. I'm sorry I have to tell you. I'm sorry my double life is over. Because for 6 months, I got to be someone different. Someone important. Someone who walked into rooms and people listened. And I don't know if I can go back to just being me. The recording ended. I sat there in the silence of our bedroom. The room where we'd made love and fought and dreamed about our future together, and realized the man I'd married was gone. If he'd ever existed at all. This wasn't just financial betrayal. This wasn't even just lying. This was my husband discovering he preferred being a con artist to being my partner, and resenting me for making him come back. When Daniel came home at midnight, I was still sitting there with my laptop. He saw my face and froze. Charlotte. Your heart rate hit 165 at 2:14 a.m. last Tuesday, I said calmly. The exact moment I texted you. Want to know how I know that? The color drained from his face. I've read everything. The messages. The photos. The pitch deck. And I listened to your voice memo. The one where you confessed to crimes you still haven't had the courage to confess to me in person. He collapsed into the chair across from me, and I watched him age 10 years in 10 seconds. I was going to tell you, he whispered. I just didn't know how. You've had 6 months to figure it out. Over the next 3 hours, he confessed everything. Confirmed every layer I'd uncovered. 12 couples. Over $200,000 in stolen savings. Travis had disappeared 2 weeks ago with whatever money was left. Daniel had been planning to run too, to leave me and start over somewhere new where no one knew what he'd done. The only reason he'd stayed was because he couldn't figure out how to get his name off our mortgage without me noticing. I did love you, he said as the sun started to rise. I do love you. I loved who I got to be with Travis more. And there it was, the core truth at the center of all the layers. My husband hadn't just betrayed me for money. He betrayed me because I represented the life he wanted to escape from. The normal, stable, boring life where he was just Daniel. Not crypto elite Daniel. Not successful investor Daniel. Just a guy who sold medical devices and was married to a nurse and lived in a suburban house that looked like every other house on the block. I'd been his anchor. And he'd spent 6 months trying to cut himself free. I turned Daniel into the authorities the next morning. Not because I wanted revenge, but because 12 families deserved to know the truth about where their money had gone. Deserved the chance to come after him legally. Deserved to know they hadn't failed. They'd been conned by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The investigation is still ongoing. Daniel's facing multiple fraud charges. Travis is still missing, probably running the same scheme in another city under another name. I filed for divorce immediately. Daniel tried to fight it, tried to convince me that he'd been sick, or brainwashed, or addicted to the rush. But I'd heard that voice memo. I knew the truth. He hadn't been brainwashed.
He'd chosen this.
Every single day for 6 months, he'd woken up and chosen to be someone else. Someone who hurt people. Someone who destroyed families while playing dress-up in expensive clothes. And he'd resented having to come home to me. The divorce was finalized last month. I kept the house. Daniel's lawyer argued he needed it, but the judge pointed out that Daniel would likely be spending the next few years in a much smaller residence courtesy of the state. I'm 33 now. Starting over in every possible way. I had to change my name. Some of the families Daniel scammed blamed me too, assumed I knew. I get threatening messages sometimes. People who lost everything and see me as part of the con. I understand their anger. I lost everything too. Not just money, not just my marriage, but the version of myself who believed love was real, who thought she could recognize the person lying next to her in bed. I still think about that heart rate spike sometimes. 165 BPM at 2:14 a.m. The moment his body betrayed what his mouth wouldn't say. If I'd been paying attention, I could have caught it so much earlier. The small transfers, the changed passcode, the distant look in his eyes when I talked about our future. But I didn't want to see it. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale, in the college sweethearts who beat the odds, in the happily ever after we'd promised each other. So here's what I learned, peeling back all those layers of betrayal. Sometimes the person you love most is a stranger wearing a familiar face. Sometimes they're not having an affair, they're having an entire other life. And sometimes the worst betrayal isn't what they do to you, but who they become when they think you're not watching. Daniel's Apple Watch told me the truth his mouth never would. His body knew he was lying. His heart rate knew he was terrified of getting caught. But he wasn't terrified of losing me. He was terrified of losing the lie. If you're listening to this and something feels wrong in your relationship, if the numbers don't add up, if there's stories of holes, if their heart rate spikes when you ask simple questions, trust that feeling. The truth lives in the details. In the data we don't think to check. In the old accounts we forget we set up. Look for the layers. Peel them back one by one. Because the surface betrayal is almost never the whole story. And if you find out the person you love has been living a double life, remember, their choices don't define your worth. Their lies don't make you foolish for believing them. Sometimes, loving someone just means you're too close to see the monster they're becoming. I see it now. All of it. Every layer. Every lie. Every moment he chose himself over us. And I'm finally free of the weight of believing in someone who stopped existing years ago. Daniel's heart rate hit 165 BPM at 2:14 a.m. because he knew his world was about to collapse. Mine just took 5 layers to finally understand why. And sharing this story felt like carving a truth into the oldest tree in the forest. It's vulnerable, but it's out there now. If my story from the telling tree resonated with you, or if you've ever felt that gut-deep knowing that something was wrong, please pass it along. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you have your own story, the comments below this old tree are a place where we can listen without judgment. Thank you for gathering here with me.